Open up the GP2x console. I've removed all of the buttons and the existing little joystick that fitted inside here. The screen is connected to the board by this small ribbon cable. Very gently lift up that brown part so that the ribbon cable becomes free. What I then did was to cut out a suitable hole for the D-pad. This was from, I think it was from a generic GameCube controller, and then fashioned it into a way that it would fit into the case and move freely, missing this screw post. After that stage, spray painted all the buttons and the D-pad a nice metallic black colour, and then got worked with the actual motherboard itself. This is the GP2x motherboard. By using a pair of small pliers, snippers rather, one of these, you can remove each of the pins connecting to this little joystick so that it comes off. You can then sand that down smooth with a Dremel bit, a nice sort of sanding drum on the Dremel, so that it's all nice and smooth. We then took some rubber top tack switches, which are these, with a very mushy feel, with no audible click. They feel like any other controller, in fact. Bent out the 4 pins, cut out 2 along one side and straightened out the other 2 using a normal thin piece of cardboard, and mounting these tack switches so that, for example, these ones has got its pins going this way, this one this way, that up and upwards. It means that you're not going to get any chances of any shorts with any of the 2 sets of pins touching each other. And also, if you do it like this, where there's like about a 1mm gap between the tacks, you'll find it fits in very well onto the board. This is the board, and in fact we can do this particular part live. Cut out a small notch onto here, which will fit into this position. I'll just put a bit of hot glue on the back, not too thick. So I've already worked out where the position is for this. Get it nice and straight and press it down. That is now complete. If we put the case front into the correct position with the 2 guiding pins, you see here that it's quite central. Talking of the front of the case, I made a small notch and a corresponding tiny notch in the D-pad, so that when this is inserted in position, the D-pad can't rotate. It can only move along its up and down axis as it should do, and therefore it will keep position in the front. A tiny bit of play, but you need that for it to move properly. So I've put the board together, put the ribbon in place. This is always quite a fun part of the project. And you use a little cotton swab and some flux, and you touch the metal contacts around the tack switches, and then when you touch them there's a slight hiss as the solder sticks onto the tacks very well. And there we go. Work your way around, and then what we're going to do is to connect our wires like so to provide the joint. I've just put a white wire which connects to one of the 2 pins on each, which I'm using as ground, and then the other 4 colours for their corresponding position on the D-pad. These wires can go into the recess by the shoulder button and over the side of the board. We've got the D-pad connected, and if you press the button you can see that it reacts against the pad just as it should do. I'm now going to connect the wires to the back of the relevant pins, and then we can test the system. I originally bought one of these replacement PSP batteries for my PSP, but then found out because it was a Chinese knockoff that it didn't work. However, there's nothing wrong with the battery, and in fact if you take one of these and open it up, remove the shell and move the tiny protection circuit board across, You ain't going to believe this, but it fits inside the back of the console case, as you see. These batteries have 3 connections. One I presume is to probably tell the system the current status of the charging. So I need to incorporate a way to do a recharge jack. So I'm going to utilise an audio stereo headphone, which of course you can get on pretty well anything these days. The problem is, of course, they're quite a decent size, and therefore they don't fit onto the GP2x motherboard in order that you can close the case. I've looked around and you could relocate 1 or 2 parts, but it starts to get a bit complicated, and the idea of this is to make it very simple for people to follow without a great deal of experience on this sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is to cut this part of the battery cover up and also trim along the edge, because that will then give enough space for the battery to sit in and have this alongside. The hole for this will stick out through the back of the case and allow us to recharge the system. The height of the battery section is perfectly adequate to take the stereo jack. Here's the recess that was cut through, and the other side was straightened down. What we do then is to work out with a multimeter as to which of these contacts are working with a stereo audio jack. Once you've done that, in this case it's these 3 connections, what we're going to do is to drop this into the recess and then wire these wires onto the 3 connections here. We're also then going to run the positive and negative wires up through the console and around here, so that we can put it in quite easily. And we need to make sure, of course, that the wires are connected to here and into this jack correspond on the charger unit. As originally I only got 2 hours on one single PSP battery, I've put 2 in place by removing the back of the AA battery holder entirely. There's just enough space to put 2 of these together. I've had to put the protection circuit for the second battery over here, and of course protect it with electrical tape. However, it's now wired directly into the motherboard and it's ready to close. Of course, adding 2 of these batteries together in parallel increases the amperage and will therefore give much longer battery life. To charge the system, I just did a very basic mod to a PSP battery charger. This way we can still use a charger for doing that purpose. This is a stereo jack which plugs into the back of the GP2x, and then this plugs in through the mains into the PSP charger. It took 4 hours to charge from flat, and it then goes from red to green to signify that it's completely charged. So here's the system in its entirety in its silver and black finish. I put it onto the T mode so you can see that all the buttons work nicely. Shoulder buttons, start, select, volume, and of course the D-pad, which works extremely well. You can also get diagonals quite easily, which is very handy for playing action games like Gradius. The reason I'm showing this game is that it's a very good one to show the D-pad working, particularly with the diagonals, because you can't survive in a game like this if it's not all working nicely and properly. I'm not very good at playing these games. I like to be, but I'm not. So I'll do what I can for a short while. Well, there's a few seconds left for this video to take. At least you can get an idea of what this is all about. I think you'd agree I wouldn't have got this far if the diagonals weren't working well.